It's also very important to me, as it happens, that I have my own beliefs. They are a belief in the Enlightenment. They are a belief in the eternal adventure of trying to discover moral truth in the world. Discover. It's a terribly important word to which we might return. It's a fight. It's an empirical fight. It's one that was begun in the middle of the last millennium. It's given the name the Enlightenment. And there is nothing, sadly, that the Catholic Church and its hierarchs likes to do more than to attack the Enlightenment. It did so at the time. Reference was made to Galileo and the fact that he was tortured for trying to explain the Copernican theory of the universe.
I was ejected from a whole city.
Were you?
Yeah, I was told to leave Salt Lake City.
What, because of your...
For sarcasm.
Your ways?
No, for sarcasm. It was? It was for sarcasm. Had they known of my ways, they would throw me out of the state of Utah, I think. This was sarcasm. You get in the central square, and there are all these people in white robes from the Church of the Latter-day Saints, or Mormons, and they try and convert you, of course. It's their whole business, is to try and convert you to make enormous sums of money out of you, and that's what they do. And they particularly, of course, go for women of a certain age, women whose children have probably just left home and whose husbands are playing golf and they're rather alone and so on. And so what they think is the great appeal of Mormonism is they said, and we were all gathered round and shown around the tabernacle, and then our little cluster, this elder of the church said, and we know that when you die, you'll be reunited with your whole family. And I said, what happens if you're good? It was... So you're not welcome here. You are not welcome here. We would like you to leave. Which hotel you're staying in, we will pay your bill. We would like you to go. And it's quite serious.
It's just saying that.
It did cause quite a lot of laughter. It's a preposterous idea that you're going to be reunited with all those hideous aunts and uncles. Eternity.
It's horrible.
It will be Christmas afternoon for eternity. That's a selling point of their religion. Oh, I want to join that religion. But I guess, anyway.
This church is founded on the principle of intercession. Only through the apostolic succession, only through the laying on of hands from this Galilean carpenter, whom we can all admire, only from the laying on of hands to his apostles, to St. Peter, to the other bishops, all the way down to everyone consecrated in this room. Anyone ordained here will know they have this extraordinary power to change the molecules of wine into blood, literally, to change the molecules of paste bread into flesh, literally, and to forgive the sins of the peasants and the poor whom they routinely exploit around the planet. Only this church has this extraordinary principle that it is through these male priests, and only male priests, that this is given. It is a doctrinal fact. It is more than a doctrinal fact. It is a dogma. Extra ecclesiam nulla salus. Outside the church, there is no salvation. That is a dogma of the church that has been used to excuse all the missionary zeal, all the rape and torture of the Aztecs and the Incas, all the horrors of South America and Africa and the Philippines and the rest of the world, to which other churches and other cultures have also their guilt to admit. It's not unique to the Catholic Church, and I never said it was, and the motion doesn't say it was, or at least the opposition of the motion does not arrogate to the Catholic Church uniquely this sin. However, the particular nature of the exploitation of the poor, the vulnerable, and the young. If I were to talk to a priest now, believe me, that priest would be the most worldly, charming, self-deprecating, snobbish in a Ronald Knox, Alfred Gilby sort of way. He would be lovely. He would smoke. Gosh, how daring. He would be a sort of ha-ha-ha priest, and the superstition and the nonsense that we read about of the church, it's absolute. Don't pay any attention, Stephen. Just join Farm Street or the Brompton Oratory and have a marvelous time as a Catholic, and everything is lovely and splendid. But be poor and ignorant, and my goodness me, every single detail of damnation and original sin and of any possibility of your complaining or asking to think for yourself. I said, let's think of this square mile. Just imagine in this square mile how many people were burned for reading the Bible in English. And one of the principal burners and torturers of those who tried to read the Bible in English here in London was Thomas More. You may know if you've read the novel Wolf Hall, which won the Man Booker Prize just the other day. Now, that's a long time ago. It's not relevant, except that it was only last century that Thomas More was made a saint, and it was only in the year 2000 that the last pope, the Pole, he he made Thomas More the patron saint of politicians. This is a man who put people on the rack for daring to own a Bible in English. He tortured them for owning a Bible in their own language. The idea that the Catholic Church exists to disseminate the word of the Lord is nonsense. It is the only owner of the truth for the billions that it likes to boast about, because those billions are uneducated and poor, as again it likes to boast about. But they are the ones it can tell and bully and domineer.
There's this rather feeble thing that people say is science doesn't know everything, and the assumption therefore is that you can then proceed as if what you've said is science knows nothing. All right, there isn't a scientist alive who claims that science knows everything. Any scientist would be incredibly disappointed if they felt that the end of science had come and that the last sum had been done and that the last apprehension about the universe had been made. I mean, look at the Large Hadron Collider. They're all terribly excited at the possibility that the Higgs boson field won't be discovered, won't be proven, and then the standard model will have to be totally rewritten, and that'll be something thrilling for scientists. If you want to hear something that a scientist usually says, it's "I don't know," because that's basically the tool of science is to take your ignorance and to try and find out. It's that simple. The pleasure of finding things out, as Richard Feynman called it. Now, as humans, we don't spend our time, unless we are scientists 24 hours a day, just finding things out. We live, we love, we make mistakes, we wonder why this happens to us in a metaphysical, emotional, moral, social, sexual way. We have all kinds of worries and fears and disturbing thoughts about life in the universe, and science can't even begin to cover them, and no scientist would claim that it does. But that doesn't mean that Genesis is true. That doesn't mean that Sunni Muslims are right to blow up Shiite Muslims. It doesn't mean that that Hindus are right to blow up Muslims in India. None of that follows from the basis that science doesn't know everything. Science doesn't know everything, therefore I'm going to ram my religion down your throat and tell these women what to wear in public and whether or not they can go to school. How does that make sense?
Even though I've talked about the history and the structural problems of this benighted institution, and the cruelty and the unpleasantness it has caused around the world, I have yet to approach one of the subjects dearest to my heart. I've made 3 documentary films on the subject of AIDS in Africa. My particular love is the country of Uganda. It's one of the countries I love most in the world. Been there many times. I've interviewed Yoweri Museveni and his wife Janet before, unfortunately. She suddenly saw God. There was a period when Uganda had the worst incidence of HIV/AIDS in the world. I went to Rakai, the village where it was first spotted. But through an amazing initiative called ABC, abstinence, be faithful, correct use of condoms, those 3, I'm not denying that abstinence is a very good way of not getting AIDS. It really is. It works. So does being faithful. But so do condoms. And do not deny it. And this Pope, not satisfied with saying condoms are against our religion, please consider first abstinence, second being faithful to your partner. He spreads the lie that condoms actually increase the incidence of AIDS. He actually makes sure that aid is conditional on saying no to condoms. I have been to, there's a hospital in Bwindi in the west of Uganda where I do quite a lot of work. It is unbelievable, the pain and suffering you see. Now, yes, it is true, abstinence will stop it. It's the strange thing about this church. It is obsessed with sex, absolutely obsessed. Now, they will say, we with our permissive society and our rude jokes are obsessed. No, we have a healthy attitude. We like it, it's fun, it's jolly, because it's a primary impulse. It can be dangerous and dark and difficult. It's a bit like food in that respect, only even more exciting. The only people who are obsessed with food are anorexics and the morbidly obese. And that, in erotic terms, is the Catholic Church in a nutshell.
There is reason. You can say it is reasonable to suppose this, that, or the other. The beauty of science and the beauty of free thought is that it doesn't stop there. Reason is almost akin to superstition. You may think this is a very odd thing to say. Surely humanism stands up for reason above all things. No, reason, like anything else, must be tested. Blaise Pascal, the great French mathematician and philosopher, reasoned about light. And everything he said about light seemed so reasonable. Now, I'm not going to make an anti-French comment here, but it's perhaps typical of the French that they would never, in those days, have dreamed of dirtying their hands in order to prove their theory about light, because their theory about light was reasonable. But Isaac Newton being British and clumsy and dirty and unafraid of getting his fingernails torn, poked a hole in a piece of cardboard and demonstrated that what Pascal said was actually untrue. And this is one of the great moments of empiricism. It's testing. You don't only question, you test. That is the very basis of science. If science has a definition, and everybody tries, mine is humility before the facts. It doesn't matter how reasonable what you say is. It doesn't matter how beautiful your theory is. You must be humble and supplicant in front of the facts that open up in front of you. And that is what all great scientists have been. They've been imaginative, yes. They've been fantastically artistic in some cases, inspirational in many cases. But they've always been humble in front of the facts. Now all this is the joke of the age in which we live. All this is like me describing colour theory or describing who Shakespeare was. It's so fucking obvious that it's astonishing it needs to be said. Because I grew up in an age in which the Enlightenment sort of ruled. There were people who went to church and who believed in God. Now, I want all of you to understand it is no part of a humanist's job to mock an individually pious and devout individual. That's not who we are. We are not interested in persuading them against their religion. I have no interest in telling a devout Catholic, a devout Muslim, a devout Jew that they are wrong, that there is no God. Why should I bother to do such a thing? If they are happy, it is none of my business. However, I think we know the corollary. It is none of their fucking business what I believe either. And it is not their business to impose their revealed truth on the extraordinary world of doubt, skepticism, empiricism, reason, and enlightenment that we have built. A flawed world. A world that is filled with contradiction, ambiguities, and problems. A world that is almost insoluble, and yet in which everybody has the most important freedom of all, and that is the freedom to think, the freedom to express ideas without the sense that they will be consigned either to a literal or a metaphorical hellfire and abomination by those who claim some warrant from some God whom they have not proved exists and whom they cannot, in any sense, convince reasonable people has power over them.
But there is a solution, there is an answer, there is redemption available for all of us and any one of us. And for the Catholic Church, funnily enough, I think it's a novel by Maurice West. The Pope could decide that all this power, all this wealth, this hierarchy of princes and bishops and archbishops and priests and monks and nuns could be sent out in the world with money and art treasures to put them back in the countries that they once raped and violated, whose original systems of animism and belief and simplicity they told would take them straight to hell. They could give that money away, and they could concentrate on the apparent essence of their belief. And then I would stand here and say the Catholic Church may well be a force for good in the world. But until that day, it is not. Thank you.